All right, folks, welcome to another XenTegra webinar Wednesdays. And yes, it's not a mistake this week. We are an hour early. We had to accommodate our guest, Light Networks, today for a minor schedule shift. And luckily, we got it out there nice and early so you guys weren't caught by surprise. So we're going to be talking about your wide area network and how you can future-proof yourself and really understand, how do you get ready for the future of remote work, whatever you want to call what we're in today. And I got a great panel of guests, and so I'm going to stop my share and kind of just view our screens, and I'm going to open up the line. So first, I want to welcome Robbie. So Robbie, if you want to give yourself a quick introduction and what you do for Light Networks.
Sure. Thanks, Pete. Great to be here with you on your broadcast. And I co-founded Light Networks 15 years ago. Bedrock of our business is enabling real-time communications through complex transport design. So what we're talking about today, kind of depending on where people are at in the current evolution of their WAN, we help people navigate and migrate from what you would have designed 10 to 15 years ago, or maybe even 5 years ago, to something that would support a more modern application stack. So that's what I do.
Nice. And thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're a busy guy. So, and next up we got Steven. So Steven, if you want to give yourself a quick introduction.
Hey, thanks, Pete. Yeah. Been in the telecom and, UC space for about 10 years. And I see this as being live streamed on YouTube. So hi, Mom. But definitely excited to talk with you guys today and show you a little bit of what we've helped our clients accomplish from a next generation WAN perspective, both from a technical, operational, and financial perspective. So
cool. And someone commented where we're from. So Robbie, you said Atlanta. Steven, you're coming from
Atlanta, Georgia.
All right. I'm sitting in Charlotte. I was going to say Massachusetts, coming from Boston, but Charlotte, North Carolina. And then last but not least, Luis, we got you on as well, and you got a great history from what I understand.
Muted.
It helps to hit the mute button. Hey, thanks, Pete. Appreciate that. Yeah, I've been in the call center business for 40 plus years, and I've worked both in the operational as well as the technical side, and provide the consulting for Light Networks, and look forward to working with folks.
Nice. And you're coming from?
I'm also in Atlanta.
Nice, hot Atlanta. All right. Well, actually, it's warm here in the south this today. I know the north, they got a lot of snow. So, All right. So thanks for joining us, folks. And as always, we encourage question and answer. We do have the question and answer dialogue up and running today. So if you please put a question in the dialogue, and attendees can comment, upvote questions. That's a cool little feature. And then if you want to send us a chat, feel free. But we are here and paying attention to any and all questions. Today's agenda is simple. I'm going to do what I usually do, which I run some polls, and then I'm going to hand it off to Light Networks and let them talk about WAN and how they're helping you guys optimize your wide area network and your strategy moving forward. If you haven't already, check out webinars.XenTegra.com. March has a great listing of guests. I got Control up next week. I got a special guest later on in the month, Mark Templeton, joining me for just a discussion on the industry, and a lot of great vendors rounding out. And then at the end of the month, I'm actually going to be talking to Citrix and the product management team around their Citrix desktop as a service offering and how it plays into the whole Azure stack. Events.XenTegra.com. If you check out that link, later on this week, tomorrow, I got a discussion with product management over at Citrix on micro apps and how Podio ties into that. And then finally on Friday, I do my monthly hybrid cloud workshop, 2-hour workshop, 1 to 4. You can check that out and understand how to leverage Citrix better. Podcast.XenTegra.com. Andy, our founder and CEO, loves to do podcasts. We got different vendors, Citrix, VMware, Nutanix, iGel podcasts. So check those out. And then finally, yes, everybody who attends today, we do give you an Uber Eats voucher. And Megan, who's behind the scenes, is helping out get those out. We usually get those out within 24 hours. And, yes, we try to accommodate all requests. And yes, I'm giving away some cool giveaways this month. This month, I'm going to track down and give away a PlayStation 5. And then I got a couple other small swag gifts like T-shirt packs and a XenTegra hat. So I try to make it fun and interesting. And thank you guys for taking the time to join us. And then finally, we are giving away a Ford Bronco at the end of the year. And if you head over to bronco.zentegra.com, you can find out the ways you can get into that drawing. And I am going to eventually twine in my friends at Light Networks. So keep an eye out for that. All right, let's have some fun and get the audience involved. We'll warm you up with a simple poll. Just about you guys. Hey, this is my first event/workshop. So XenTegra event/workshop/webinar. I am and just kind of pick the role that fits you best. And just as you're filling these in, we can't see who's answering them. No one else can see who answers them. So no data or name or anybody is shared publicly. So don't worry. And that's about it. So we just use these as ways to have a little bit of anecdotes as we go through the day today. So I'm going to give these a couple more seconds to answer. I like to at least get 70% or higher answering. And a last call for clicks going once, twice, and last call. All right. So we got a lot of first-time attendees today. So welcome. Anybody who's returning, welcome back. As you all know, I do these weekly. So I appreciate you coming week after week and giving me feedback. I do try to take that feedback into account and make it better. So, and then we try to cater to all roles. So, we try to make this technical, but also make it so that we understand what the ROI, TCO, and all the goodness of the why. So, I try to cater to all roles. All right, let's have a little fun with some techie information. I'm going to launch this poll. 3 questions here. Just an EUC question, like which EUC platform are you using today primarily? Which hypervisor platform are you using today primarily? And then finally, what does your SaaS makeup look like in your enterprise? Are you, and this SaaS could be, hosted in your own data center versus not hosted, right? So, what makeup of your applications are SaaS versus non-SaaS, or hosted versus non-hosted? And this question comes into play because, Robbie, I'd imagine the more hosted apps you have, the more critical your WAN is. So,
well, it certainly impacts the design for sure.
As well as, and the reason why I like the EUC question is because people connecting to VDI, server-based computing, et cetera, that plays heavily into the WAN as well. So,
indeed.
Yeah.
And then
how do we become eligible for this Bronco giveaway? I'd like to
know. And then I imagine this fun thing we're on called Zoom plays with the WAN as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So last call for clicks going once, twice, and final call. All right. So here's we got a lot of, it's funny. When I run these polls, Citrix always comes top of the pile. And then usually a close second is VMware Horizon. But it's starting to spread out. Like WVD is getting more and more presence. This is kind of cool to see Microsoft WVD getting a bigger push. I get a few folks who go Amazon Workspaces, so pretty cool. So these are, obviously very WAN heavy features, the WVD and Workspaces. Hypervisor question, that's more for me just to gather data, but I'm really curious to see how many people are really leveraging Nutanix. And then finally, the last question, it's kind of all over the map here, but it's really in the middle here, the 49, we'll say 50 to 0% range of SaaS apps. So it's pretty interesting. It'd be kind of cool. It'd be really cool to put this out there to a wider audience, but really cool data here. All right, final questions. Just some fun industry stuff. So, what kind of, how are you set up using Azure AD? Are you cloud only identity? Are you hybrid identity? Are you considering or evaluating an infrastructure as a service compute service today? Pick your primary. I know you could be doing more than one. What's your O365 strategy look like? Are you Exchange Online entirely, or are you, kind of a hybrid / totally on premises, right? Or pick, whatever one fits your bill. And if you're a Chrome Enterprise shop, awesome. And then finally, what does your remote worker strategy look like, at least for the foreseeable future? I know it's kind of hard to say, hey, are we ever going to go back to normal? I don't know. But what does your remote worker strategy look like for the foreseeable future? And then what does your thin device makeup look like? And I always ask this question just to get an idea of, what type of devices you're considering. And we'll give this a couple more seconds, but I think O365, M365, Robbie's a big piece too, as far as WAN and WAN optimization and SDWAN, all the different terminologies out there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. All right, last call for clicks. Going once, twice, and final call. All right, so we got a lot of interesting results. A lot of folks using hybrid, which before, if this was a year ago, it was flip-flopped. Azure's king of the hill usually when it comes to, infrastructure as a service. But it's funny, it's the M365 conversation. It's still almost neck and neck between hybrid and online when I do these week over week. So it's interesting to still see that. And then finally, the remote worker one is all over the map, but I think it's safe to assume that remote work is here to stay. And in fact, I'm on a panel tomorrow. I'll be talking about this with IGIL in their Disrupt conference, and it's going to be interesting. We have about 2 other guests on there that we're doing a panel discussion. But so a lot of great data here. As always, I appreciate the audience taking part. Helps us, just to add to the conversation and get things started. All right, finally, social media. If you're not following XenTegra, Light Networks, or any of the folks on this panel on LinkedIn, et cetera, please do. Robbie, I see you got a great presence on LinkedIn. We all try to put up meaningful content and things that are going to matter to the interwebs. So with that, without further ado, I'm going to stop my share and hand the reins over to, I think, Robbie or Steven. You're going to be sharing your screen, and we're going to be talking about Light Networks and kind of a use case, et cetera. We have a great agenda for today. And audience, please ask questions. And if you don't, I will, and that can get dangerous sometimes.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. Robbie, I have the PowerPoint called up, so whenever you're ready.
I can see it. Awesome. So I wanted to give you guys a quick understanding of the context with which we approach the market, how we go about video, how we go about seeing the client space that we're in, and kind of how we interact with our clients. We have worked with XenTegra for many years. One of the principals of the organization and I had kids that went to school together. That's how this whole thing got tied in. And then as XenTegra was working to deliver their services, they recognized that there was some overlap and some ability for us to help. So as we view the market, most of what we look at are contact center and collaboration, customer experience type and communication type protocols and applications. Those applications drive a requirement for real-time and stable and reliable network infrastructure. So again, as I mentioned earlier, the bedrock of our organization was really built around the design of highly reliable either internet or private-based connectivity. So Stephen, you can go ahead and move on to the next slide.
All right.
Really defining this, extra points for anybody. I should have given you a poll question. Maybe we could do a live poll question to see, has anybody ever administered on this an X.25 ISDN or frame relay network? These are things that if you're my age, you've been around. If you're Stephen's age, you didn't really know what they were, but that's okay. Generally speaking, what I see most today is a legacy WAN environment that is accessing, at this point, kind of a hybrid, and that kind of does reflect in the poll that you asked for, which was where historically what we had was a bunch of internally hosted applications based out of an internally owned or hosted data center, and it favored workers that worked in an office and needed access to a centralized application. And that's what the historical legacy WAN approach looks like. If you advance that slide, Stephen. So what we see today is a proliferation of as a service, work from home, any variety of things that has drastically impacted both the application stack and the user itself. So where the user is and where the application lives largely is going to impact how you design your network. So what we're running into is that people have maybe an MPLS network or a DMVPN, which is essentially over the internet, but it's kind of a nailed up tunnel type design. These types of things, they don't really leverage that infrastructure as well anymore, unless you're an organization that still has a primarily internally hosted applications infrastructure. That does bring up a variety of different things, not just access, but how do you secure that access? And then how do you provide redundancy to any variety of things? So as we move from large scale offices to maybe a hybrid approach, is there a manner in which you can actually design a scenario where the client being your employee, how do they access these applications securely? How do they access both as a service applications, but also ones that remain in-house? Because there will always be some component of applications that are probably best served inside your own facility. So one of our very large customers is a financial processing organization. They do their processing in-house. So as a result, a lot of the stuff that they do, they're still going to have a private network, but they also have applications that require, as a service from, to support work from anywhere. You can go ahead and skip ahead.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about our process. Robbie covered some of the things that we're sort of seeing from an industry perspective, but I just want to talk quickly about how we help our clients, and then what we do, what we come in and do, why we do it. So we start up here at the top, and we'll come in and help with a requirements and design session. So that's really sit down from a technical perspective and outline and map applications, outline and map business requirements, and then develop an action plan to achieve those business requirements. And then ultimately put together a design that meets the needs of the next generation network. Where we come in next, and where I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking about, just walking through some of the examples, is the pricing, solicitation, contract negotiation, and then the requirements validation. And so we do that where we come in and we work with a number of different vendors to help our clients negotiate contracts, get the best prices, but we also make sure that these vendors can do what they say they're going to do, which is sort of the biggest hurdle when it comes to vendor evaluations. Is like, and if anybody's ever done an RFP, that they check the box that, yeah, we can do that, and then if you find out later that no, they certainly can't do that. So that's where we sort of come in, and not only from a pricing perspective, but from a technical perspective, evaluate and then help make a recommendation.
Yeah, Stephen, if I can jump in just real quick, I think it's important to note that, you're going to have a lot of people that are going to approach you and suggest, where I opened up and said, hey, the WAN is changing, and, there's a variety of ways to address that. When you get to the point where someone suggests to you that, hey, an SD-WAN option is going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread for you, and there's an ROI associated with it, and we do help with establishing the ROI. What the average vendor presenting that SD-WAN solution doesn't, realize, especially if they're a manufacturer, that manufacturer is like, hey, we've got a great solution. You can ditch that MPLS network, save a bunch of money, and go with, a more commoditized internet-based service. The problem is that rests an entirely enormous research project on your plate. How do I know who the best provider is at every location that I own? And how do I go about benchmarking the pricing associated with each vendor in each location, and then build some sort of analysis around that so that I can then put together an ROI that you can promote up through management? So I think there's this enormous step involved in that process that gets missed or ignored, largely because those providers are typically looking to sell a solution. They know that they can save you money, but they don't really ever kind of put any great value or recognition into how much effort really is involved in doing that. So I just want to make sure to highlight that, Stephen. Sorry.
Yeah, no, thanks, Robbie.
So Stephen, just to kind of maybe tee up, I don't know if you're going to talk about this, but I know you have a lot of great customer examples, but one of the things I love about you guys in working with Light Networks is that you'll go in, in let's say the requirements and design phase, but even prior to that, and say, hey, Mr. Customer, we're going to help you figure out how you save money on your WAN. And that's one of the things I love about you guys. You go in, you can say, hey, you're doing this, this, and this, and we can save you X, Y, and Z, and here's how we're going to do it. So maybe you'll share a couple of examples on that.
Yeah, definitively. Got a couple of examples teed up. I wanted to cover off on some of the technical stuff that we can do. So what we do have a fee for service technical discovery that we can help with in regards to mapping an environment. And this is just an example of a large manufacturer that we supported, and basically designing and documenting their environment. So we have engineers that can come in, drop some tools, crawl the environment, and then pull these documents together, these Visios together, that can help inform future roadmap decisions and recommendations down the road. And then now is when I'm going to jump into a little bit of the financial discovery. So from a financial discovery perspective, we can run the gamut. So we'll pull current invoices, actually throw them into spreadsheets, help you review your contracts. So the actual language where it says, hey, if we disconnect this, we pay, a 15% ETL. Also help with inventory review, budget building, which I'll show a specific document in just a second. But then ultimately, this again will help us make recommendations and build a future roadmap on the solution that we might want to partner your particular organization with. So I'm going to walk through a couple of those examples right now with a live walkthrough of some documents that I prepared for a couple of my customers. They've been redacted, but I will outline this particular customer that I helped is a large multinational manufacturer located in Georgia, and then I've got a couple of different things to walk through here. So this is where I'll walk through the solution pricing breakdown, and basically what this evaluates is like their current WAN today and what it looks like from a network services perspective, as well as maybe current routers, current switches, current firewalls, what they're potentially spending in those categories, and then what we can potentially do with an alternative solution. So this is where we'll go through and evaluate. These are the different providers. I'm going to click to this tab, and it's very busy, so bear with me. But this is where we went through and we outlined existing costs, and then finally pulled in multiple different downstream vendors to say, hey, who can we potentially leverage in this location? Who's the cheapest? Who's the second cheapest? And then more so than that, we actually can help build out a tiering structure. So this particular customer, he inherited a network, and it had MPLS everywhere. It had an MPLS circuit at every site, and so I just started talking with him, and I'm like, how many people are at this site right here? It only has 10 meg of MPLS. And he's like, oh yeah, it's a sales office. And I'm like, well, how often are the salespeople in there? He's like, never. They're always on the road. And so I'm like, well, so why are you paying $2,000 a month for an MPLS circuit at this site? And so that spawned the further tiering of his sites to where we said, all right, that's a tier 3 site, and that's only getting a broadband connection. Tier 2, we're going to maybe look at dual connections, either an MPLS and a broadband backup, or an MPLS and a DIA circuit. And then tier 1 sites, they get customized design every time. It's multiple connections, multiple points of diversity, and then from there we basically build out a recommendation structure of who we're going to be bringing in from a vendor perspective, for like network services wise, in order to meet the need.
So Stephen, how often when you walk into a customer, like how often is it that they're running MPLS when they shouldn't be, like, or not necessarily everywhere, but like I guess how to summarize it, like is MPLS always needed? And that's something that you guys really look for, right?
It definitely is something that we look for, because it's really dependent on the application stack. Like Robbie mentioned, there's these complicated application flows that customers currently utilize. And if we take a look at the applications, where they live, who accesses those applications, and then ultimately from there we can sort of make a recommendation of like, you do need MPLS or you don't need MPLS. Like a lot of customers that have an existing on-prem voice network, MPLS is usually the best way to go, because that voice traffic coming from wherever the PBX is located is going to compete with other traffic, and that needs prioritization. Now, if you're 100% SaaS business, like a lot of the people that recommended or said on the poll that you put out there, it's 100% SaaS is not always needed from an MPLS perspective, or MPLS is not always needed when you're 100% SaaS environment.
Yeah, Stephen, you had mentioned earlier Zoom, Pete, and we're a big Zoom partner, and we do Zoom implementations for both phone and meeting. That's a perfect example. So where 10 years ago we ran into, and we still see quite a bit of, kind of Cisco phone-based systems or an Avaya phone system that's on premise. People are evaluating and moving towards a cloud-based solution with a RingCentral or with a Zoom, someone like that. We help with that analysis. As we're doing that analysis, one of the first things we start to look at is what's the network design, because as you move and migrate those real-time applications over to the cloud, the MPLS, the requirement for MPLS really does diminish.
And Steven, maybe you'll cover this, but like on average, and maybe you guys don't want to put a number behind it, but what, when you walk into a customer, like, what's the average savings you typically see with the customer?
Oh yeah, that's highly dependent. I can't really
let me take a swing at this, because there's a fallacy in here that people and again, I don't mean to pick on providers, but when a manufacturer suggests that you should look at an SD-WAN solution, they're going to suggest that you can go broadband everywhere. And people assume, not thinking through it, but if you understand how the broadband providers work, each cable provider is granted a monopoly over a territory. So there's only one broadband provider in any one territory. So really what you end up having is you have a hybrid approach of for any site, like Steven said, let's call it a tier 1 site that has redundant connections. You're going to end up with a dedicated internet access site or an MPLS, if that's appropriate, with a secondary, most likely, of broadband. But if you do your savings calculation based on, I'm going to do all broadband, then you're going to hear someone come back and say, I could save you 70% over your current MPLS expenses. I think that's overinflated, because you're still going to need some sort of dedicated internet access, just because of what's available in the marketplace. Not to say that you couldn't use 2 broadband providers, so maybe I get 2 broadband circuits from Comcast. Problem is they're running through the same infrastructure. So one goes down, the second one is going to go down too. So you've kind of lost your diversity. So I'd say comfortably, you could probably go with 20 to 30%, and it kind of depends on a variety of factors. How old are your contracts? Who's your provider? Things like that. So
yeah, those are a lot of the dependencies. Those are a lot of the dependencies and variables. I also think that the value prop that is above and beyond just the hard cost savings that you get from a network's cutover, like we're talking about, is the manageability. There's a lot of benefits of a single point of orchestration that, like, let's just say an FTD from Cisco doesn't give you. They try and make it consolidated all through a single portal, but a lot of the times it just doesn't work. So now I think that the way that SD-WAN, you can leverage, I always talk a lot about like FTE. Repurposing an FTE. Basically, if you take them away from having to patch and update iOSs, and take them out of the nitty gritty of managing routers and switches on a day-to-day basis, and let them manage everything through a single portal where things are more automated, you can start to repurpose them to a different project, and that's where I think the ROI gets very compelling, if we can quantify it. If we can't quantify it, then it's maybe just like a cherry on top. But if we can quantify it, then it gets very compelling when it comes to these network cutover solutions. So just a quick, like, overall backstory on this particular customer. They had MPLS from CenturyLink, and they were, we had the conversation early on in our engagement about the fact that they did not need MPLS at every location. So as we went through the process, we evaluated a number of different SD-WAN providers and ultimately landed on CloudGenix, that is now owned by Palo Alto. So we leveraged their solution along with these decreases in cost savings that we were going to attain from disconnecting MPLS in a few locations, but keeping MPLS in a few of their key locations that still had an on-premise version of SAP. And ultimately built out a long-term budget planning document for them. So that's what you're seeing on your screen right now, as well as an implementation timeline and implementation cost structure. So that's one of the things that I touched on earlier, is helping build budgets, and that's exactly what we can help do. As you can see, these are set for cutovers in certain months, and so we'll talk about Q1 versus Q2, Q3, and you can see some of the prices start to decrease as we go through the year, which is how we're helping them build a budget. And ultimately, this is the budget that my client took to their CIO from a network perspective and said, this is what it's going to be for 2021. So that's down to the detail that we can get into to help you, take some of that burden of budgeting off your shoulders. The other example that I wanted to give is actually a mutual customer of XenTegra and Light Networks. And this was actually a recent win right at the end of the year. XenTegra was able to help their customer with Citrix SD-WAN services. And they came to us with a problem of having been in a very long-term contract with CenturyLink, and also CenturyLink managing their routers, which is a bit of a pain point for them. CenturyLink wasn't very nimble. They were moving to a hosted version of Citrix and wanted a little bit more control over that application. And so we ultimately had them help them investigate SD-WAN, and the Citrix solution just naturally had that integration with the Citrix VDI solution. And so we ultimately recommended that solution. But just from breaking this down, we were able to go through, and this is where we documented all of their existing circuits, all of the existing pricings for those circuits, and then even helped calculate an ETL to determine if they disconnected on a certain date with a certain ETL percentage, what their total liabilities would be for ending the contract early. And then help
for those that don't speak telecom, and ETL is what?
It stands for early termination liability. So basically a penalty for canceling your contract before the fulfillment date. And that's one of those things that I mentioned earlier in regards to the total overall contract review that we'll do. I went in, reviewed their contract, and saw that they were assessed a 35% penalty in the last year of their contract. And so ultimately was able to help them calculate, all right, if you disconnect in October of 2021, that will mean you have 6 months remaining on the contract and an ETL rate of 35%. I was able to help them calculate the full ETL. So they actually were able to save a decent amount of money by moving away from a legacy 5-year-old MPLS contract that they had with CenturyLink to moving to a hybrid DIA broadband and LTE deployment. So they actually were paying for MPLS at a couple of their ATM locations that I think was $700 for each ATM. And we were able to actually bring that cost down to only $100 per ATM, and including the Citrix SD-WAN that gave it some failover capabilities was very, very interesting to them. And then also ultimately, one of their other major pain points was the ETL process that CenturyLink input. That this customer moved the ATMs around a lot. And when they moved an ATM, they got hit with an ETL. And so we were able to help them negotiate into their new contract that there will not be ETLs assessed for 1 year after the disconnect date, and they have the ability to replace the revenue of the existing circuit within that 1 year term. So ultimately helped them move to it. They actually procured and are in the process of implementing the Citrix SD-WAN today, and we're planning on slowly rolling out this network solution that we've recommended throughout the process.
This is cool. So let's circle this to another topic. You guys were asking about remote work, and how is the whole notion of remote workers impacting the WAN and the WAN strategy?
Rob, you want to take this? You want me to?
Well, I mean, I'll give you at least my thought process. I think what we're going to see, Pete, is you're going to have a hybrid office environment. I don't think it's going to end up in a scenario where everybody's permanently working from home. I also don't think that the days of everybody must come into the office are going to return. I think that a lot of employers realize that there are definitively ways to make sure that your employees are productive when they're working at home. So even if you're talking about contact center employees or sales, or there's a variety of tools that are out there that you as an organization can use to track relative productivity. Because as you move to that original slide that we showed you with all these different as a service applications, there are tool sets that allow them to actually monitor and trend how active or inactive a given person is, and then kind of compare that against your ideal employee, and then you can coach them up. That said, I don't think that you're going to return to all people in an office, which is going to fundamentally change what does the WAN look like. So I think you're going to see less people in the office at once. I think that's going to be pretty consistent moving forward, and that's going to favor designs that have the ability to effectively lace together a highly redundant design for those sites that do retain workers, but also to ingest work from home type employees. So that's kind of why these SD-WAN and you'll hear SASE, those types of applications that are built for that. I think that that's really fundamentally why you're going to see this rise and continue to rise as people kind of ride out existing contracts for SmartNet or for Juniper support or whatever their connectivity solution of choice was.
Yeah, and it is a mirror is SASE the new hot term for 2021? And is it a fad or is it here to stay?
Oh, it's here to stay.
Yeah, I would definitively say it's here to stay. I think our industries both see a lot of fluctuation in like the centralization versus decentralization. I think we saw it a lot with like everybody. Each offices used to have local resources, right? Like local servers, local print servers, local databases, and then we all said, all right, let's centralize all these things. And now I think we're into corporate data centers, and now I think we're seeing a lot more decentralization of those things. Obviously, with cloud being proliferating, so I think that the security now is one of those things that we need to decentralize and push as close to the user as possible, just given all of the different points at which in between the user and the application that there are vulnerabilities. And I want to. Sorry, go ahead, Robbie.
I should say, I think you're leveraging, so you see these things. It's a software-defined network. It's a software-defined WAN. All of these, conceptually, as you move through these things, essentially what you're doing is you're leveraging automation to make deployment of these policies that are contextual policies across your user base, whether they be in an office or whether they be at home. The industry is pretty good at creating acronyms to confuse people and to make it sound new. And that's driven, I think, largely by the analysts. Say what you will about the analysts. I mean, I think Forrester and Gartner and those groups, they do a good job, right? They follow these products and then they create a category, which forces, so they have a business model. So understand that, but it's not without value. What they're doing is comparing something like, so if you guys are familiar with a product from Cisco, Meraki, that is a Gen 1 SD-WAN solution. Fine product. It leverages automation. You can automatically create redundant tunnels to all of your offices and use internet services. It's a little limited when you compare it to a Gen 2 type product, which would fall into that SASE, kind of product category. So just kind of as you look at that, I do think it's there to stay. And I think that there's this tendency to try and compare one to the other. And I think really it's just kind of holistically and collectively, this is it's a connectivity strategy for allowing your employee or client to connect to the applications that they need to connect to no matter where they are, and apply redundancy factors where it makes sense to do so.
I did want to just circle back to the work from home point that you were making, Pete, a second ago, and just really talk quickly about some of the things that we've seen in regards to troubleshooting. So it's funny that Robbie brought up the Meraki solution, because they actually have a work from home version of the SD-WAN and their Z series of services. And I think that might be the sort of the next thing that all of these SD-WAN companies are going to come out with, is like a home internet router for home users to be able to connect back in and VPN back into the network. But especially with sensitive, data latency sensitive traffic, especially if you have Zoom or a contact center platform, it's going to be a reality. But I think IT is going to have to own troubleshooting a home user's internet connection. They're going to call up and say, hey, my Zoom's not working. And so the more visibility we have into the end users configurations and the end user's just home network, we can say, all right, this is your problem. And I think that's sort of like the next, as soon as that can be made financially feasible, I guess, is really the next sort of like wave. And like, how do we bring all of these remote employees together into a single network, have visibility into all of them, and have manageability over all of them? So
fully agree. And when you start to look at it, if you are moving someone to full work at home, there is an analysis you can do. And this is not something that we actually get down to that level, but you have commercial real estate that you probably pay, if you're in a city, maybe $15 to $25, $30 a square foot for an employee per month. That adds up. And you can take that money if you send them home, and you should be looking at strategies. How do I redeploy that money and maybe utilize it for that type of technology? So we're seeing that I actually did some testing because I experienced the same work at home with kids at, with school and all that. And the internet services where I live are absolutely horrendous. Like you couldn't imagine how bad they are. So I actually did some testing with some advanced kind of look at some of these technologies. And really they're taking those SD-WAN products and trying to package them down into a home use consumable piece that, is, depending on your scale, I mean, it's sub $100. It could be down as low as 50 if you're at quantity. I think what you'll find is that we'll probably see these, kind of leveraged for, executives that are wanting to work from home or need to work from home, or, certain subsets of the employee base. And I agree with you, Stephen. I just think you're going to see that start to filter its way into our network design, because it does allow IT to be able to we talk about something called mean time to innocence, so that you have an understanding of, is the problem really mine to own? Is it the network? Is it the application? Is it your home environment? It could be a variety of different things. And this is something that anybody in IT is really struggling with. Is I got people working from home. They may be working on their own laptop or their own desktop, which could be riddled with malware or whatever else that is impacting performance. It has nothing to do with the network, as an example. So things like that, I think, are going to start to filter their way into the tool set that IT is going to be utilizing in the future.
So the call center guys, I was going to jump in. The call center guy has to jump in when we talk about the SD-WAN, that kind of stuff. And so, and I agree. And what you're going to find in the future is much like, for the workforce and the call centers, they have somebody that's watching the entire workforce management for the call center. You're going to have somebody in a similar role monitoring the dashboard of all the remote connections and seeing where there may be some issues, et cetera. And it may just be that the local ISP is having an issue, and this IT dashboard will identify that, and you'll be able to resolve and move the calls to other groups to be able to satisfy that.
Yeah, and one of the things, Robbie, you mentioned the at home. I know Meraki. Yeah, they have a great offering, and Citrix, believe it or not, has a great offering as well. The 110 LTE, which is pretty cool. I'm trying to get my hands on one, but it's so Citrix has kind of made a big splash in the SD-WAN space, and they're not traditionally known to be a networking. Yeah, they have the tried and true NetScaler product line, which, fun fact, I was on that team for 3 years at Citrix, so I have a pretty good background in the space. But but what's interesting is Citrix's SD-WAN is pretty solid.
I mean, I think honestly, they were the first one in the business. If you go back 25 years ago when Citrix was at 1.4 or 1.5, I mean, they were enabling WAN well before anybody else was to enable an application to perform across a low speed, link. So no, it's not surprising at all. I don't think, anyway, if you have history in the industry anyway.
Cool. So just quick FYI to the audience, if you have any questions, please shoot. And Stephen, I don't know if you had any other slides you wanted to show. I just wanted to steal, didn't want to steal your thunder. But any final anecdotes, Stephen and Robbie, just on any customers that you dealt with?
I don't know that I have an anecdote necessarily so much as an offer. I mean, we'd love to talk. If you have this and this kind of resonates and this is something you're considering, it's obviously very core to what we do, and we can help you through the process. So hopefully that's something that does come up. But this is, you asked kind of what percentage of people do we walk in that still have MPLS and should have MPLS. I still see it every day. Not everybody has migrated over to internet-based connectivity, and there is absolutely savings to be had. And you can do it and maintain the same reliability so long as you employ the right technology, and you can create an ROI for it. It takes a little work, which we're willing to put in the elbow grease to assist you with, but that is kind of how it works.
Nice. I guess fun question, in kind of, from your point of views, because you guys are masters at networking, WAN, LAN, et cetera. Yeah, how is Citrix and end user compute products impacting the WAN, just from your perspective?
I mean, I think that those types of products have always kind of lessened the impact of poor WAN quality. That's kind of core, and that's kind of what I was referring to back in the day of the MetaFrame way back. I'm not even sure they call it MetaFrame anymore. But any of these virtual desktop technologies that enable you to abstract that problem. But the impact to the WAN, it makes it a little more consistent. And the actual bandwidth required is less when you evaluate it that way. So yeah, there's definitely an impact, no doubt.
I think it definitely impacts the design as well, though, just where all the components live, why they live there, and how are the users connecting to them today, and then in this new environment, how are they going to connect to them? So there's lots of variables that have to be accounted for before you just jump in with an SD-WAN provider.
Cool. All right, folks, final kind of call for questions as we come to a close, and I'll do kind of my wrap up. So for those who don't know, who XenTegra is, XenTegra is a value-added reseller, but that's not our core focus. Our core focus is very simple. We want to enable you, the customer, to get the most out of what you're invested in. But parallel to that, we form our partnerships, but we really focus on being a true partner to partners like Light Networks in our core DNA. But really, it's solutions, right? Solutions drive what we're going to build, and then behind that we put services, and then behind that we sell products. So yes, I can sell Citrix, etc. But the key here is we're going to help you build the best solution possible. And part of that, and Andy always jokingly says, Robbie, does every customer have a network? And the simple answer is yes. So we have to make sure our networks are working and tip top. But I really believe this, XenTegra enables IT so the end users can be successful. And that's what it's about nowadays, is our end users are the core to what we do. And if they're not happy and they're walking around saying product X stinks, or their experience is not great, then the project hasn't been a success. So we have to enable our users to be successful. And Light Networks is a great partner. We love working with these guys. And anytime I've been involved, or any of my sales guys have been involved, you guys come in, you do a great job, and you find ways to save the customers money. And that's what I love about working with you guys.
Thanks for having us, Peter. Appreciate it.
Partners.zentegra.com. You can check out all the great partners we work with. And you know what? All the partners we work with, guess what? They impact the one critical thing that we're all talking about today, the network. So the network is key. And, I brought up this earlier, bronco.zentegra.com. If you check out, there's a lot of ways you can get in the drawing. But one way is you can talk about our Citrix managed service with our MSP team. But part of that, you can also bring in Light Networks and really get an assessment done of your network and understand, where are your faults, where can they help you potentially save money, and then get into that next step of, all right, let's build out a scenario here. And Steven, I know you've done a couple of those, right?
Oh yeah. Those are two of many that live on my computer. And so more than happy to do that exact same breakdown for any of the people on the call.
So the other thing we do is assessment. So we do a bunch of different types of assessment. We do Citrix based assessments. We do VMware based assessments, Cisco/networking based assessments. And that one I would highly recommend you take us up on, because Chris, who runs our networking practice, comes in, they do a full end-to-end assessment of your network, and they can really focus. If you want it to be more WAN focused, they can do that. And we can pull in our friends from Light, or you can make it more edge focused. You can make it more EUC focused. It all depends, but we can cater these assessments, and guess what? They're free. So they're a 4-hour commit of your time. And I jokingly call them the XenTegra interview. It's a good way to get to know how we work and what we do and why we do it. And if you do any of these assessments, that gets you into the drawing. So a few things to think about today. We are going to follow up with you, and we are going to say, hey, do you want to dig deeper and assess your WAN? And guess what? If you're not the person to talk to, hey, introduce us. We can get involved. We can plug everybody in. We can figure out where we can save you guys money and make your WAN, your LANs, your networks tip top, and be ready for the future of remote work, hybrid work, SaaS-based applications, etc. So we will be following up, and I definitely want you all to take us up on working with our friends at Light Networks to figure out how to optimize your wide area networks and streamline your day-to-day. So with that, I'm gonna pause really quick and bring my gallery view back up here. And so, Robbie, any kind of final thoughts you want to share with the audience, or any kind of final things you want to leave the audience with today?
Oh, hey, listen, I just really appreciate the chance to get an opportunity to talk with you guys. Again, we focus on customer experience and communications and collaboration. Um, that's really what drives the business, and those applications are supported by network and network design. So anything we can do to help you guys, would love to interact. I am active on LinkedIn. Reach out if you'd like to, like to follow Light Networks and or connect with me. Love to connect with you.
Cool. Steven, anything on your side to leave the audience with?
I would just say, if anything, do the evaluation so you can win that Bronco. It's a sweet car. I've been tracking it for a long time, and coming out later this year apparently. So
yeah,
definitely would love for us to review your WAN, so that you can get a chance to win that Bronco.
Cool. And then Luis, anything on your side?
No, Pete, thanks again for having us. This is really great. Actually, a very fast hour. So appreciate the time.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm going to say the audience, these guys are definitely worth, bringing in and assessing your networks. And if you are not the right person, let's get involved with the right people, because you know what, the network is going to become more and more critical as 2021 evolves and into the future. So with that, I'm going to say thank you to my panel today. Thanks for joining me. And thank you to all the guests in my recurring attendees. Thanks for coming back week over week. And as always, next week we'll be back here at 2:00, and I will have my friends from ControlUp on. We're going to be talking about a couple new things they launched since the last time we had them on, and also the future of what they're doing with the new company they acquired. So definitely want to join that. And March is packed with a lot of great stuff. So as I always say, thanks for joining me, and see y'all on the flip side.